we've got Talia, Ashley, Julia, and Jacque. Hope that they're all on. And what we're hoping with this session is really that the speakers can tell you a little bit about both their personal and professional experiences, some about their jobs, their pathways to their careers, and what they think some of the things are that have inspired them as they have moved through their careers and have taken action in different ways. So I might start, and if the four of you don't mind, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourselves instead of reading a massive bio or something about you. So Talia, are you on? Could we start with you? Hi there.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
I also just wanted to let you know that Ashley just texted me and said we're having some weather stuff.
Yes.
And her internet's a little bit spotty, so I just wanted to just in case when she's next, I can let you all know.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've had that all day today.
Yeah, you just asked to introduce first, right?
Yep.
My name is Talia. I grew up on the Lummi Reservation just as a guest. I'm not Lummi. My family's from Alaska, and I'm also Jewish and Irish. My grandma grew up on, they call it like the Aleut village of Nikolsky, but the traditional term is the Unanga village of Nikolsky, which is a really, really small island on the Aleutian chain. And she moved to Seattle and to like the lower 48 when she was about 18. I grew up in Lummi, and I got my associates at Northwest Indian College, a tribal college on the Lummi Reservation. It's the only tribal college in Washington State. They have about 6 sites. I'm sure most of you or some of you might know a little bit about Northwest Indian College, I hope. I transferred to Western and got my bachelor's degree at Western, where I met Ashley. And then I got my master's degree in Indigenous education and kind of trying to work on my Ph.D. at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I currently work for full time. I work at Chief Seattle Club. It's a nonprofit that serves houseless folks in Seattle, Native houseless folks specifically. And then on the side, some of my life passions have been some projects I'm working on with Ashley. One is Matrilineal Nerd. I won't spend too much time explaining it because I want to let Ashley. Matrilineal Nerd is a website that we created together to sell stuff that we handcraft. And then we also have a small farm that we started this year in South Seattle. So that's just like me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ashley, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of either the work you're doing or what you're learning and hoping to do?
Hi, can you all hear me okay? I might turn my video off.
Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name is Ashley Alvarez. My pronouns are she and her. I am also Unanga. My family is from Anga Island, across from Sandpoint on the Aleutian chain. I'm also Filipino and Black. Like Talia said, I am one of the co-owners of Alagnax Farm, along with Talia. I started food justice work in 2017 with another Indigenous food sovereignty project, and then sort of transitioned into this new role. Yeah, that's what I'd like to share today.
That's so great. And it looks like we've got some information in the chat box, both about Matrilineal Nerd and Alagnax Farm. So folks want to check that out. Julia, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Julia Wilson-Peltier. I'm Oglala Lakota, Turtle Mountain, Chippewa, and Assiniboine Sioux, and I'm a 3rd generation Seattle urban native. I'm a full-time student. I'm studying in my first semester of the University of North Dakota's Indigenous Health Ph.D. program. I I got my bachelor's from Western Washington, my master's in public health with an American and Indian public health specialization from North Dakota State University. And currently I'm a part-time graduate assistant at UND, in which I'd help manage a grant supporting group prenatal care programs in 5 different Indigenous communities located through the Great Plains region. But yeah, I'm really excited to be studying Indigenous health. It's the first academic program of its kind in the US and Canada. And yeah, I feel really blessed to be in the 2nd cohort of the program. And I also just want to mention a bit about Urban Native Education Alliance, or UNEA, based in Seattle, which is a nonprofit that I've been involved with on and off for the past 13 years, either through various contract work or just volunteering. Yeah, UNEA and its program, Seattle Clear Sky Native Youth Council, has a lot of really great resources and opportunities for Native youth living in the Seattle area. And then Clear Sky and UNEA has played a really big part of my upbringing as a Seattle urban Native youth, as I'm just really excited to see UNEA's growth and success through the years. And yeah, I'm on this panel just to share a bit of my story and why I'm studying Indigenous health. And also because as a youth, I was really involved in community events and conferences and programs. I'm a co-founder of Clear Sky Native Youth Council, which we founded back in 2008. It's a while ago. And I attribute much to where I am today because of my involvement in these programs. And I really see the importance and impact that programs such as this conference have on Native youth. And this type of work and community involvement is just really important. And I'm really proud of all of you in attendance for seeing that by just being here in this space today. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Julia. And Jacque, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you all. I'm Jacque Julien, and I'm just going to share a little bit about what I wrote. As you know, when I got these questions, it was okay, very powerful. One, I'm grandmother to David Cortez Julien, mother to Jalen, Janelle, Josiah, and Jasmine Julien. And I'm also the daughter of Teresa, Alberto, Elgin, and Vicky. That being said, who I am, for me, I like to think I introduce new ways of being, and just this idea of notion that our value is rooted in a title and or what we produce. I really struggled, when we ask who we are as individuals. For me, I am a creator. I am a visionary, a healer by nature. I am definitely my mother's daughter. And I bring in her teachings. One of those teachings is to leave spaces and places better than how you found them. That being said, I am the love and the strength of all those that came before me. I am the teachings of the history that they tried to erase. I am a vessel to this voice inside, and that I'm learning to love. And that I am enough, and that is enough. I am a wave to elevate your belief in self and a kind reminder that you too are enough. The work that I do, in short, I am an inaugural ED for a grassroots organization. And like what many of the folks that has been shared already is, we are all volunteer organization sharing our teachings, offering new ways of being, demanding that how we access wellness and what we need as far as healing is seen as included and not excluded. And so the fight for justice for health is one that we live in opportunity of abundance. And so we get to create those spaces. And so for me, in short, our mission, we work to eliminate racism, to dismantle it. A lot of our work focuses on policy, disrupting systems that are harmful to, and that have been harmful to our BIPOC communities. And in that same notion, we come into this space of reimagining Like, we know these systems exist. And so collectively, when we share our stories, we find power and strength, and we create the spaces that we need. So that's what brings me here. That's my work. And I'm happy to be in space with all of you.
Thanks so much, Jackie. You know, and I think that you're, I don't know if it was a poem. When you were reading your words, it felt like a poem to me, just the cadence. So I'm going to maybe jump off from there, because part of what I heard was why you do the work that you do. And I'm curious if Julia, Ashley, Talia, if maybe you could talk just a little bit, and we'll go in that order. Like, what spurred you to do the kind of work that you're doing? How did you get on the path that you're on? Julia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I study Indigenous health because Native people experience a lot of social and health disparities as a result of attempted genocide and like harmful federal Indian policies, continued systemic oppression, and historical trauma. And I just really think it's time to fix that narrative by having Native public health professionals from our communities doing the work and in positions of leadership. The program that I'm in, it's so unique because it decolonizes the way we approach public health by incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing into the core curriculum and program values, as well as having a faculty that's mostly Indigenous. I know as Native students in the education system, whether it's middle or high school or higher education, it's really hard to navigate these colonized systems as they were built on our attempted erasures. And it's really easy to feel invisible or tokenized in these spaces. Like, I know I sure did as a youth and as an undergrad student. But in my opinion, times are really changing right now. Like, we're seeing positive mainstream visibility in television for the first time. We're seeing Native leaders on a federal level, such as Secretary Deb Haaland. We're seeing the removal of racist team logos and monikers. And we now have programs like UND's Indigenous Health Program that's geared towards Indigenous students. So it's really an exciting time in history. And a lot of these things that are happening are what our ancestors prayed for. And my goal is just to use my education to become an American Indian health policy researcher, because policy plays such an integral part in public health. And my professor, Dr. Warren, he likes to say that there's no such thing as bad health, just bad policy, which I really like that quote. And in order to have effective, evidence-based and informed policies, data is essential. And it's important to note that research is often considered a dirty word in many Native communities, as a lot of tribes have experienced great harm and trauma from outside researchers doing invasive and unethical research on our people. So this is why we need more Indigenous researchers from our communities conducting community-based research that utilizes strength-based approaches, is transparent, and has the community's best interests in mind. So when research is done in a good way, we really yield good data that can help support new policies that can help improve the health of our communities. So my personal experiences with growing up in Seattle and heavily involved in my community as a youth really shaped where I am today. Urban Native communities, it's important to note that they're vastly different from reservation-based tribal communities. And in the public health field, urban Natives lack appropriate advocacy on federal, state, and local levels, since, well, one reason is we don't have like a cohesive voice, such as a tribal council, to speak on our behalf, among many other reasons, since each urban Native community is very unique. But an example of this is how well over 70% of Native people in the US live in urban settings, but only about 1% of the Indian Health Services federal budget is allocated to urban Indian health programs. So like most Native people, my family's really experienced these inequities firsthand. So my grandma, who moved to Seattle from Pine Ridge, South Dakota, during the Indian Relocation Act in the 1950s, relied on the Seattle Indian Health Board for her healthcare services. And she had chronic pain that was misdiagnosed for several years and ended up getting diagnosed with late-stage terminal cancer. So due to the underfunding of the Seattle Indian Health Board and just lack of comprehensive services offered, that my grandma passed away shortly after her extremely delayed diagnosis. And I don't tell you this with intent to put down the Seattle Indian Health Board in any way, but just to provide a firsthand example of how bad policy causes starved healthcare systems, which in turn causes inequitable delivery and access to healthcare services that contribute to the poor health outcomes we see today in our communities. So the Indian Health Service, it's not necessarily a broken system, but it's absolutely a starved system. And it's just very frustrating as the US has treaty obligations to American Indian and Alaska Natives to provide healthcare services. And when our healthcare systems are so severely underfunded, it really contributes to these poor social and health outcomes that we see. So that's just some of my story and background as to why I'm pursuing a doctorate in Indigenous health. I just really want to help advocate for equitable urban Indian healthcare and just use my education as a tool to better serve my community on a larger scale. Is my Seattle intertribal community has done a lot for me, and I feel very accountable to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Ashley, like why are you doing what you're doing? What's been the impetus for you?
Sometimes I ask that question to myself a lot, but I think looking back, younger Ashley didn't know that she was going to be a farmer. Didn't necessarily go down that path. I went down the path of social work initially. I have my master's in social work from the University of Washington. And when I finished that program, I didn't feel that I was on the right path of specifically wanting to help folks like my grandparents, folks like my mom, folks like other people who are dealing with chronic health issues and chronic health in general. I grew up with my grandparents in Bellingham, away from both my grandparents' ancestral lands. My grandpa immigrated here from the Philippines when he was a teenager, and then my grandma's family is Alaska Native. And so we had a lot of, we navigated food insecurity and sort of like food apartheid in Bellingham. And so navigating that and the impacts of that is kind of what led me to want to do social work and want to do things that weren't being a doctor or being a nurse, because math is a whole nother monster that I am not good at. So I knew my strengths at a young age. And I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't necessarily know how. And so after going and getting my master's, I realized I wanted to support people, and specifically my communities, around food access and education. And so I navigated that role through all of my positions that I've done in nonprofit systems, and finally was able to do that in 2017 with doing a Indigenous food project where we supported urban Native community in King County with culturally relevant foods and medicines, and then offering educational opportunities. And I think the why is like for me to sort of do my personal part in dismantling systems of settler colonialism. And I feel like I can do that through food and through education and through centering some of and being grounded in some of the values and teachings that my grandparents taught me, that my mom has taught me, and that other elders in my community has taught me. And so yeah, that's the why. I just really want to make sure that my community lives long, long, long lives and has access to land and food and the ability to learn and relearn some of the things that are still here with us, but also maybe hidden due to settler colonialism.
Wow, thank you. Talia. I think the question is just like, why you do the kind of work that you do?
Yeah, I started out like a long road of education. I grew up going when I was a little kid, my mom went to Northwest Indian College. So I've always been kind of connected to like college campuses somehow. And then I entered into going the route of trying to become a teacher. And then I wanted to become a faculty member when I started seeing there's a lot of issues in the field of education to teach teachers. And I went down this long, windy road of academia. I'm currently I'm kind of a PhD student. I say kind of because I'm on like the verge of deciding if I want to finish or not. I'm a student at UMass Amherst. I finished my dissertation proposal about a year ago. I end my exams and I have like 2 chapters to write for my dissertation, which is like a big book that people have to write to graduate. And then the pandemic hit. And education is still a really big passion of mine. Like I grew up on like a really small reservation and was bused to a school district called Ferndale that some of you may or may not know, but it's like a very small white supremacist town, and a lot of kids that were Lummi and then my family were bused to Ferndale, and it was just a really messed up K through 12 experience for me for a lot of reasons that probably everyone in this room's probably had similar encounters with the field of education. So I really went down that route wanting to like change systems. And then when I decided I wanted to teach teachers as like a faculty member, I had a very bizarre, not great experience at UMass Amherst, and I moved back to the West Coast, thank God, from Massachusetts, and landed in Seattle, and then met Ashley, and we've dabbled in a lot of different things together. And then now I'm also passionate about food and medicine, like with native plants. I started working in this realm of work, just learning about native plants in general. And that's how we started our website, Matrilineal Nerd. I started by making like lotions out of native plants and selling those. And then about a year ago, when the pandemic hit, we were invited to support the COVID-19 mutual aid here in Seattle, which is a network of BIPOC folks who were really responding to some of the widespread like inequities that were happening specifically to BIPOC folks when the shutdown was happening, and tons of people were losing their jobs. So I was supporting a leg of the COVID-19 mutual aid really early on. They were distributing funds to about 500 different families. And we distributed about $500 each to these families, who specifically for BIPOC folks. And then they started a pantry in South King County that's specifically for BIPOC. So if anyone's in Seattle and knows folks that like want a really safe pantry to go to, they don't share the address publicly for safety reasons. And there's also no, like, you don't have to sign up, you don't got to give a bunch of information. So that's a resource that's available if folks are interested. And so that's how I kind of entered into like food work. Ashley and I are growing food, and for this pantry and hopefully growing beyond, and just growing food in general. So that's a little bit of my why. I grew up on a really small reservation and really, really poor. And so I've always seen myself as someone I'm really good at like connecting resources together and then making them available to people. It's just like when I was at I worked at Northwest Indian College really briefly for about 2 years, and I ran our resource fair, and I like grew and expanded that. I'm really passionate about gathering and connecting the dots and resources between institutions and then making them available for Native folks. So that's my why.
So I don't know if you can see the chat box. There's like a cheerleading section going on for you in your last 2 chapters. So I have a question, and I may just like do somewhat the reverse order. Like, you all have got some really interesting sets of experience, and I'm curious the importance of having a mentor or like support systems around you as you decided to take the paths that you took. So Talia, can I start with you? Then I'm going to go Ashley, Jacque, and then Julie.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Michaela and her family. They were like my really big mentors were her parents, Michael and Michelle Vendiola. I met them when I was in high school, probably earlier than that, but I think they like became my mentors in high school. I worked at a really nonprofit in Lummi called the Lummi Cedar Project, where I met Michaela's dad. And then when I was a tribal college student, I worked with Michaela's mom, Michelle, who's like a fierce Native Paiute woman who I think a lot of the stuff that I've learned about organizing and my values have come from both of Michaela's parents. They're both pretty amazing and have like guided me through like how to navigate the field of education and just like doing work in a good way for our community. I just think mentorship is so important. So I'm hoping people are in this space are connected to mentors that match your values and can help guide you. Yeah.
Ashley?
Yeah, I echo finding mentors that match your values. I think growing up, I relied a lot on my grandparents for some of that mentorship in high school. But post high school, I kind of was able to find some additional mentors that were matching my growing values as I was like learning more about life and learning more about myself and like how I wanted to sort of mold my journey. And I think some of those folks came out through some of my peers and some people who had a lot more life experience than I did. And so, yeah, I think for me, I really valued intergenerational mentorship. So relying a lot, not just on, I think a lot of times mentorship is seen as like finding someone who is older than you, finding an elder, finding or going to an elder or going to someone who's older than you. And oftentimes I was able to find more connection with people who were similar age to me, who might have had different life experiences than I did. And I used a lot of their advice in addition to elders who had similar life experiences or values that I had grown up with or that I was growing into. Yeah, I think my mentorship has always kind of flowed depending on where I was in the chapter of my life, but definitely still very much intergenerational.
Thanks, Ashley. Jacque?
Thank you. I've been in education for 25 years, and I know just from my personal experience, just having one interaction, knowing that somebody cared about me. I cannot tell you how many schools I moved from. I'm originally born in Seattle. I'm joining now from traditional lands, the Duwamish folks. And it was challenging, right? Not having connection, but that one person, all the difference that it made. For me, mentorship has been, it's instrumental, and I think of it in many ways. One, being mentored, but also like, who am I mentoring? Because I feel like, we are all a wealth of information, And if we hold this information, one, it's part of, I guess, who we are as individuals and our cultures. It's that responsibility to share those teachings, right? To share those stories. And it is one through mentorship that has challenged me to be in spaces that I never imagined. And so when I go and I talk about ridding ourselves of these ideas and these titles, that's where our value is rooted in. It has been a mentor that challenged me when I did my undergrad at UW Bothell, studying society, ethics, and human behavior. And they said, go for this job. I said, you have to have a master's, and I'm still completing my undergrad. Like that, I'm like already I disconnected, qualified myself. They said, no, you don't disqualify yourself. Like, you go for it. And just in that session, with just the insight that they give, it's like who we are, right? And what we're doing in this space, we're nurturing not only the soil that helps us grow and bloom and heal, but also like the soul right within us. And so I think mentorship is like incredibly vital to like who we are and where we want to be. And I can look at this space, whether it's been in the planning or Liz particularly, just the enrichment that's been in my life that mentorship brings. And so I hope that we build upon something that's planted in this space, that we can dedicate our time to nurturing and providing that shade for others to be mentors and to give back what is given. So I hope that answered the question.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jacque. Julia.
Yeah, so having community mentors is definitely everything. And as a youth, I didn't realize how important the relationships and connections I was making were, simply by just like showing up to community meetings and events. I didn't realize I'd be making these like really vital, lifelong, important relationships. One mentor that comes to mind in particular, her name's Dr. Katrina Claw. She used to tutor me as a high school student during Seattle Clear Sky Youth Council meetings, like twice a week. And I didn't realize that would like really blossom into a lifelong mentor-mentee relationship. She was really integral in introducing me to several like resources, such as like internships, scholarships, this other programs throughout my high school, undergrad, and graduate programs. So I'm still in contact with her today, and she's just always there for me if I just need to call her up and just someone to talk to and ask for any advice or things like letter of recommendations, anything like that. Like, she's always there and supporting me. Definitely, yeah, making relationships with mentors is so important. Definitely, yeah. Thank you.
There's a comment in the chat box, and I think it was maybe Esther who said mentorship has no age. And I somewhat circle back to Eliza Julia stopping me during a conference to ask, like, where are young people at this conference? And at that moment, she became a mentor to me, right? It's like, who do we listen to? Who are we influenced by? Who do we turn to when we're trying to think about things in a new and different way? And Jacque, we've had lots of chances, and Jacque sometimes is asking me stuff, and sometimes I'm asking her stuff. And just how do you build those kinds of relationships around you seems really, really significant. So Amy, I'm going to ask like the one last question, and then I'm going to turn this back over to you. So the last question for the panel is, you're looking at either a younger version of yourself, you're looking at a young person who's asking you, how do I get started? How do I get on a path? Just like one or two things that you wish a younger version of you had somebody say to you, or what you might be saying to somebody who's looking to you where you are in your paths now and saying, like, what would you say? Jackie, I'm going to start with you.
And that last part cut off. So if you can,
Oh, dang it.
yeah, because it went on mute and then they popped back up.
Just like if you were either talking to a younger version of you or a young person who is asking you how they get started, like what would you say to them?
I would say to stay curious, to show up. Like I would say, like to get started, like you're here. And so in this work, like bring someone along. I think we all have an individual responsibility, and we, you know, society has this notion of, again, right, mass production. So if we can't gather a room of 100 people by ourselves, like we're not valuable. But if you can bring one person, right, and then that just grows. Those are those seeds. So I would say that yeah, like seeing value in who you are and your lived experience and what you have to contribute. And I think, you know, going back to what the amazing Rena Priest shared is like seeing it as we all have these little puzzle pieces. And, you know, when I think about like just even elders and the time that they would take, right, to put together a puzzle, and it would sit there, it would take their time and preserve the pieces, make sure it was a fit. Like we have to kind of like see this work in that space. And so until we're willing to, you know, collectively bring those pieces. And so society will have this idea that, you know, just because your shape doesn't fit in this, no, that means you're supposed to be somewhere else. So I guess my younger self, or going back to the question, maybe I digress going sideways, but is that you are valuable in what you bring, and challenge and question everything. It's okay to be curious and challenge and question everything, and reject this idea when people say, you know, learn to be more resilient. Tell them to change the systems that force you to be resilient. And so live right and create the spaces that you need. And we're here to support you. So if you don't know where to start, look for our emails, sign up for our emails. Our work is led by you. You can say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I need. This group that got this together, they were like, let's do it. And so we're committed. And so please, please share us your ideas, your thoughts, your loves and your hopes. And we want to make all the way an opportunity for you. Because that's what I wanted someone to do for me.
So Julia, what would you say either to a younger you or a young person who's coming up and asking you, like, how do I get to wherever I want to go next?
Yeah, I guess I would tell my younger self to truly cherish and see the value in opportunities such as this conference. I know as a youth, my mom was really strict and would make sure I would go with her to every single community meeting, event, program, conference, basketball open gym, all of that. And especially as a teenager, I would often view these things as something I had to go to instead of things that I get to go to. So I would definitely tell myself to have an attitude of gratitude, because little did I realize is that just simply by showing up to community events and programs, you know, just like this conference, I was building lifelong relationships with future mentors, elders, and community members. So I would just tell myself to really cherish and be present in those moments and see community care and meetings as a blessing and as a support system.
Talia, how about you?
I think I would have told myself that there's a lot more options than I thought were available to me. I think it's easy to, like, when you're growing up, especially if you like grew up poor, to like have a lot of fear of what the future is going to look like what Ashley said. Like, I didn't think that I would start farming or even have an interest in farming. Like, I grew up by Ferndale, that's a farming town. Like, I had a very like interesting view, or probably very like standard view of like connecting like farming to like white supremacy, which it doesn't have to be that. So there's just a lot of options available to you, and it's easy to like lead your life down like a path of like scarcity or feeling like there's a lot more available and to you. And able to like lead your life with like through like abundance would be a helpful thing that I wish someone would have told me.
Ashley, how about you?
Wow, you all said such great things. And I ditto all of that. And I think one of the things I would have told my very young self is, one, you'll be a farmer in the future. Don't worry about it. Just go with it. And I think it's like that last piece too, just like, just go with it. Just kind of flow with emotions. Even if you're unsure, even if you don't think you're quite ready, like you are ready, like you have the power to do whatever you think you can do or whatever you dream of and whatever you want to do, and finding your support systems to help guide you through that, I think is really good. Building your garden. Now that I'm a farmer, I use garden terms and plant terms. So yeah, I think building your garden, building your support system is probably what I would say, and just move like water. Just kind of move in and out of the situations that you're in.
Thank you so much to the four of you. Thank you, Amy, for trusting me with this panel, because I feel like my job was to be like a lifelong listener, and this was heaven for me, just getting to listen to the four of you. And I'm going to be carrying your thoughts and nuggets for a really long time. And you're all going to get kind of woven into the fabric of whatever I do next, just so you know that. So thank you for that.